Here's a tune you haven't heard in a while. The nostalgia for a TV show, albeit animated or live action, can be a wonder and a pain. Just imagine a point in your life when you were young or in high school or college, and you just remember seeing this very unique program for the first time broadcast right in front of you. No matter if it was, say, a weekday or Saturday morning venue, it just stuck by you. If it was good, it lasted as long as it could. And if it was not good, you kind of went with it, accepted for what it was, or just simply changed the channel to see what else was on. And for some weird reason in the 1990s, there was this strange fascination to take all these TV favorites in syndication and see if they were perfect for the big screen. The sky was certainly the limit. Addams Family, Brady Bunch, George of the Jungle, Rocky and Bullwinkle, even though it was kind of on the cusp of the late 1990s, and of course, whatever SNL sketch Lorne Michaels thought would make for perfect movie fodder. And yet, out of all the ones to choose from that proved to be the most intriguing to discuss, there is one that has held up my interest very much well to this day. My own sheer will curiosity as to how, why it got made, and whether or not it still holds up. It's a certain particular property that even to this day I still question whether or not it still has resonance. That being 1994's The Flintstones. Making its mark on TV screens in the 1960s, The Flintstones have maintained an important piece of pop culture history by showing the characteristics of modern life depicted with cavemen coexisting with prehistoric creatures, namely as household appliances.
Hey, what is that?
An automatic blender. Isn't that clever?
In a couple of months, that little monkeysaurus will wear out, and then where will you be?
He's not kidding. I'm exhausted.
It was a novel concept that ran in prime time for 6 seasons, and no doubt the idea of making this a live-action production would be ideal with so much to play around with. It all started in 1985 when Keith Barish and famed action movie producer Joel Silver obtained the rights with hopes of Richard Donner directing it. However, for reasons I'll go into later, it just couldn't get off the ground. Eventually the film rights were purchased in 1989 by Steven Spielberg and his studio Amblin Entertainment, were able to get things greenlit by Universal in the fall of 1992. Due to Spielberg's commitment with other big-scale projects, the idea from the start was to have someone else direct while Spielberg would produce. Once word got around that a live-action Flintstones movie was in the works, Brian Levant, a veteran of writing and directing in the field of television, sought to get involved. With the position of writing a script being full, the director's chair was open. At the time, the only theatrical venues Brian Levant had to his credit were Problem Child 2 and Beethoven, the latter being a bigger commercial hit with the public. Levant met with Spielberg and Bruce Cohen, who hired him due to his knowledge of the Flintstones show, which was clearly apparent from the tons of merchandise he collected. I swear, this guy has so much toys on the Flintstones at the point he could turn his house into a museum. With a director hired on, all previous scripts were thrown out in order to work with a clean slate. We'll also come back to this later. Trust me, it'll be worth it. With a new script in play, a cast gathered, and special effects provided by ILM in the Jim Henson Creature Shop, word got around and the hype machine got kickin'. Most notable was a teaser attached to Jurassic Park, which got audiences hungry for a live-action take on the famous Stone Age family. This movie was a pretty big deal back then. It was hyped as hell, was at the cornerstone front of the summer of 1994, right before we got The Lion King, Speed, and so many others. And it's a big part of my childhood too, so you can imagine how nervous I am covering this film. For you see, there are two kinds of people on this planet. Those who love the Flintstones, the TV show, and those who don't. I understand why. Trust me. And just be glad this fox loves the TV show. So I will try to be unbiased as I can here and try to be as minimal as I can in terms of comparing the show to the film, but I can't make any promises. We're talking about someone that still has one of the posters that they used for advertising the movie. Ideally, one of the best teaser posters I've seen in years. Now, of course, an adaptation is just an interpretation of one's view of the source, albeit movie, comic book, or a novel. But considering the filmmakers wanted to be as faithful as they could be to the animated series, it's gonna be pretty tricky to try and look at this as its own thing. But hey, pop quiz. Want to know how you can tell if you're gonna like this movie straight from the get-go? Yep, a rock pun. Plain and simple. If you snickered at this, don't worry. This movie was clearly for you. And if you are looking at this gag with a pure blank slate, don't worry. There's only 999 more to go. I will gush a bit and say the recreation of the opening theme is remarkable. Shot by shot, beat by beat, Levant and the crew really pulled out the stops to sell audiences how faithful they would try to be to the show. Even right down to Fred landing in his car after sliding down a Bronto crane, or the details on the drive-in theater. The Star Wars joke is a little on the nose, but it's still pretty cute. And from there, it follows any golden rule of any big screen TV adaptation to try and go beyond the boundaries of the show. It zooms in on the Universal logo. The only thing that would make this ingenious is if the dark Universal logo appears right afterwards. And immediately we see the world of Bedrock. Everything we need to know is in that one continuous long shot from pterodactyl airplane vehicles.
And on your left, you'll be able to see the Grand Canyon in about 15 million years.
Okay. You get brownie points for that joke, movie. You do. Extinct creatures that roam around, and civilized yet stone-heavy designed town. There's even visuals and small details about the place brought over by means of some throwaway joke dialogue.
Active forecast for tonight calls for light seismic activity and a 20% chance of meteor showers. Quick traffic update. Due to lava flows, Highway 1 will be closed forever.
And from there, it's just 20 or so minutes of world building, so we'll just focus on story and plot last. First up, the big one. John Goodman as Fred Flintstone. This is perfect casting, and there's no denying that. In fact, right around when Spielberg got the live-action film rights, he was working with Goodman on Always.
We were doing a movie called Always, and Steven asked me, he actually told me that I was going to play Fred Flintstone for him. And instead of smacking the little bugger, I just kind of sat there and smiled. And be honest with you, I'm a little nervous about it, because I think I'm going to hear Yabba Dabba Doo for the rest of my life.
Yabba dabba doo! Yabba dabba doo! Yabba dabba doo!
In fact, Spielberg felt the only way to get this movie to work was with Goodman in the lead and nobody else. By Lord, he was right. Goodman really channels the everyman aspect of this character. He has big ambitions, but knows he has limits. He can be greedy, but carries a good heart. I like how they do set up early on Fred has a lot to deal with being a good family member and a faithful friend. The only thing that makes him change his mind is when Fred's ego gets bruised. It's more than just John doing a voice, he really channels Fred Flintstone.
I don't need permission from my wife to make a decision. In my cave, I reign supreme. Supreme!
I won't tell her, Fred.
Thanks, pal. Now see here, Wilma. In this cave, I am the king.
And what, Fred?
And you have every right to know, my queen.
Rick Moranis' Barney Rubble is also not a bad pick.
I would like to propose a toast to not only a great bowler, but a great human being. And no offense to you guys.
It's interesting because at one point they considered having Danny DeVito play the role of Barney Rubble. But even DeVito himself felt that his gruff demeanor was not a good fit for the role, and even suggested Rick Moranis on the fly. Probably for the best, given how Moranis is really good at channeling the soft and vulnerable demeanor of characters like this. In the show, I remember Barney being a bit more gullible and somewhat dim, but here it's played up a little to have him be a bit more bright, even if naive. Again, this goes beyond just doing a voice. Moranis does a great job playing up the sweet side of Barney, which is a perfect match for Goodman's gruff portrayal of Fred.
You're the first one of us to make it out of that quarry. Look at me. I'll probably be working there for the rest of my life.
Thinking back to Viva Rock Vegas, Stephen Baldwin wasn't too bad as Barney. I mean, I can accept the fact it's a younger take of that character.
That's how my uncle, the gambler, lost everything. He lost his wife, he lost his house, his kids, his dog.
Did you know we have an all-you-can-eat buffet by the pool?
Fred, please, all you can eat?
But it felt played up as being too dumb in my opinion. Yet, Barney can be simple-minded, but he's not that stupid.
Excellent, Mr. Rubio. Finding you a new position won't be difficult at all.
Great. Because I'll tell you, I've been pounding the pavement for 2 weeks. And yesterday, my wife told me to start looking for a job.
According to your testing profile, you are perfectly suited for work in a rock quarry.
And thus, with 2 big names added to the project, how else do you fill up the open slots? But with auditions! Which very much clearly explains how we ended up with the rest of the cast. Elizabeth Perkins is not too bad as Wilma, Fred's wife, and Inner Conscience. Again, I can't quite imagine who else would fit the role fine, but Perkins does a good job and nails the basic elements of Wilma.
But you know, Fred, tails might be a bit formal for the first day.
Thanks, baby. And tonight, we are gonna celebrate.
Oh, Fred.
That's right, we are gonna find the biggest steak in this town, and you are gonna cook it for me.
Stop, please. You'll spoil me.
I like how she carries a stern attitude when Fred does something wrong and does try to put him in his place. She does see there's a good heart in him, even when he's scheming or doing something selfish. What I wish the movie did play up more was the aspect of Wilma being Fred's conscience. When Fred did something bad, she would let him know that and try to be the voice of reason. A part of that feels greatly missed here. There are eye drops of this element at times, and I do like when Fred turns into a pure snob for plot reasons, and she sets him straight. And oh, it's more than just a talking, but a full-on bash.
This? Oh, I don't think I'll be needing any of this bone china, because I don't have any friends to invite to dinner. And I don't need this television set.
Not the TV.
What do you think I am, some kind of a jerk or something?
And thus, we shall now rip off the band-aid that is Rosie O'Donnell as Betty Rubble. And trust me, I understand her presence here given the vast knowledge of the show that she had. Even more so than the movie's director, Brian Levant. Oh sure, Levant had all the toys, but Rosie O'Donnell knew all of the songs by heart, no matter how big or small they were. In fact, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have the Bedrock Twitch in the movie, which she convinced Levant to place in the movie, albeit performed by the B-52s.
The BC-52s.
Oh, of course, this is the universe of the Flintstones. My bad. The BC-52s. Don't worry. I hear your groaning. I hear all the groanings. If this was an animated adaptation, I can see her working here. She has the voice and nails the personality.
Oh, now, Wilma, don't be silly. Your husband's a big executive. You can afford it. Charge it!
With that said, the problem is, it's Rosie O'Donnell playing Betty Rubble. I will probably echo every other critic or reviewer who has said this, But in adapting a familiar book or TV show into a movie, folks will want to see a perfect visual representation. When I see Rosie perform, it feels like Rosie trying to be Betty for Halloween. It's kind of like when they had Burt Reynolds play Boss Hogg in the 2005 Dukes of Hazzard movie. Burt Reynolds is not Boss Hogg. You want someone to look and act the part.
I have $100 right here for whoever knocks that loudmouth sumbitch out.
It's clear they needed star power, and to me, it feels like that's why Rosie is here. I have nothing against her, but it says a lot when 6 years later you do Betty Rubble right with Jane Krakowski in Viva Rock Vegas. And when Jane as Betty is one of the few good positives and improvements of a crappy prequel, that says a lot. But it's not like Rosie's appearance hurts the experience entirely.
Yes? It's really better if you tear the lettuce instead of hacking away at it with a knife.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, if you... with a knife, the edges turn brown.
Well, we're going to be eating it right away, aren't we?
At best, she does nail the personality down well enough for me to at least give a pass at, and let's be honest, there have been worse attempts to insert square peg into round hole situations. Far, far worse. However, Elizabeth Taylor as Pearl Slaghoople, Fred's mother-in-law.
You could have married Elliot Firestone, the man who invented the wheel. I've got my hands full just being ashamed of him.
You got your hands full when you scratch your neck.
Now.
Okay. I know I promised I'd be minimal as I can be on comparing the show to the movie, but this is one I cannot resist. In the series, what made that dynamic interesting was you had someone who was way more heavier than Fred. And I don't mean in size, but personality. Pearl's a family member you don't want to go toe-to-toe with. Fred can cope with Wilma, but Wilma's mother was like a mirror version of Fred. She was towering, louder, and really felt like a true threat.
I'm sorry about what happened.
Oh, all right. For your sake, Wilma, here. Mother, you shouldn't have done that. Can I help it if I don't know my own strength?
In the movie, not so much. It just feels awkward to see someone less physically imposing try to be overbearing and mean. If they went with someone like Pam Ferris, that could work. You need someone to match Fred's height and attitude. But if I had any positives, this was Elizabeth Taylor's final theatrical performance as she wanted to focus more on fighting the AIDS epidemic and her line of perfumes. And if one were to go out, it would make sense to do something at least fun. Taylor at least shows she's trying to have a good time, and there is comedic chemistry in places when it does work.
There's my big, handsome son-in-law. Have you lost weight?
Have we met?
Fun fact, Elizabeth Taylor only took this role on one certain condition. That a proceed of the benefits from the New York premiere would go to her charity, the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. Spoiler alert, the premiere was a big hit. So, I can't argue it's something that was done for a good cause. The rest of the characters they carry over from the show and into the film fall into that category of we need them because they were part of the show. I'm referring to characters like Pebbles, the Rebel's adopted son Bam Bam, and Mr. Slate, who's played by Law & Order actor Dan Florek. The only reason for their existence here is because they were staples of the show. If they're not here, fans would complain. It's a shame because I would have liked to see them do more than just be part of short gags or brief scenes, given they do look the part. Yeah, I understand it's called The Flintstones, but they carried a bigger presence on the show. Mr. Slate was the tough-as-nails boss, Pebbles was the sweetheart that knew how to soften Fred up, and as for Bam Bam, he can lift heavy objects up despite his young demeanor. Come to think of it, it's funny given Bam Bam is given this small storyline to the Rebels where they adopt him from an agency, and you'd think it would go somewhere. All we get is a montage of the Rebels trying to raise him, and maybe we tune in from time to time, but that's really about it. In terms of production design and visual effects, the filmmakers did all they could to make Bedrock a fully living community, as would be portrayed in a realistic setting with some cartoon abilities here and there, obviously for comedic effect. And they went above and beyond with the technology they had, ranging from on sets, interiors built at studios, and then some of them ported over straight onto the live place, and even miniatures in some places too. For a movie of this caliber in the 1990s, before all of this, let's CGI this set here and there, it's still a wonder. Major props to production designer William Sandell, who is great at creating worlds like this. We're talking about the guy who gave us the Future Worlds and RoboCop and Total Recall, along with others like Newsies, Hocus Pocus, Deep Blue Sea, Air Force One, Small Soldiers, and too many to count. They knew everything in this world had to feel organic, like nothing was purchased from today's modern stores. Every home and prop you see in this movie was made by hand. Even things like chairs or the stone tablets they write on. The Bedrock set, as well as the Slade & Co. building, were made in the Calumet Quarry in Sun Valley, while Fred and Bernie's neighborhood was built at Vasquez Rocks in the Santa Clarita Valley. I did research up that these sets were made with a certain kind of stucco foam that was glazed, and the detail here is incredible. Funny enough, the neighborhood sets became a popular tourist attraction around Memorial Day 1993 weekend, with about 30,000 people walking through. It's a shame these sets had to be demolished after filming, but it's a wonder to see all the detail they placed in here. It looks like a place you actually want to live at. And yeah, actual stores and companies are seen in the fictionalized Bedrock, from gas stations to McDonald's, and even Toys R Us to Tavern on the Green. And they actually had to ask these big corporations to lend their name and appear in the movie. Even if they passed on the product placement, they were still asked if they could use their name as a sight gag. The biggest hurdle was finding a department store to do a gag where one customer gets their credit card smashed. Many retailers didn't like the idea of having something negatively provide the idea they had the option to tear up their credit card. Thankfully, Marshall Field was okay with it, and they gave their approval. In the visual effects department, you have two of the best companies bringing a key component of the Flintstones to life. All of the animals who were either pets or household appliances was split between digital work by ILM and animatronic work from the Jim Henson Creature Shop. This movie, whether you like it or not, is a pure testament on how there needs to be a balance between digital and practical work. The Creature Shop had to make over 20 creatures within 12 weeks. Bronto cranes, Mastodon kitchen faucets, pig garbage disposals, even small things like electric shavers. This was a major component of the show, seeing how they could be creative with all sorts of prehistoric beasts, like using an elephant for a vacuum cleaner, or a dinosaur for a pet. And certainly there was a lot of thought and creativity placed in how this technology would work in a world like this.
This job sucks.
It makes unique sight gags and also provides how organically the way the world works. With Jurassic Park showing the unlimited capabilities of digital effects, I feel like the Flintstones was that next step forward. Not just making creatures for drama, but also for comedy. Same principle for The Mask, which was released the same summer. Case in point, the family pet Dino was a major problem from the start. Originally, Dino was going to be a man in a puppet suit effect by the Creature Shop, but it didn't quite work out. According to William Hanna and Joe Barbera, Dino was always seen as a dog, and dogs have playful personalities. They can jump and do a lot of physical abilities that humans can't. So at times, Dino had to be a digital effect by ILM, but there's moments where they effectively use a puppet head and feet from the Creature Shop. I'm okay with this knowing the limits of what animatronics can do.
It's not my fault. Maybe he'd calm down if we had him fixed.
This is one of those rare exceptions where digital effects were needed, so I'm okay with that given how it plays out in the movie. And at least the filmmakers were nice enough to have archival recordings of Mel Blanc's Dino voice be used for the movie. It's a neat little treat. I can't imagine anyone like Frank Welker filling in such big shoes like that, no matter how small or big the character of the Flintstones was. Speaking of iconic voices, Harvey Korman appears as Fred's Dictabird, a character who's supposed to be both office supplies and Fred's voice of reason.
Management positions are fraught with peril. And whenever you find yourself in a befuddled state, I urge you to avail yourself of my experience and sage advice.
It's funny given Corman was on the show as an alien named the Great Gazoo, who carries similar personality traits in looking after Fred's dumb decisions. And I admit, it was nice to take that aspect of the show and utilize it well here. Whether it was intentional or not, Corman was an important part of the Flintstones, so it was nice to see him included here. On top of that, the puppetry work on his character was notable, given this used the Henson Performance Control System, which was similarly presented for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and its other sequel, Secret of the Ooze. It was a computerized system that allowed a single puppeteer to control any number of mechanics to craft a variety of expressions for one single puppet. Just imagine one hand controlling the mouth while the other is moving a joystick that produces a range of expressions. Today, I still look at these creatures and just marvel at how much they do and putting so much life into them. I can't praise the Creature Shop enough. When it comes to practical work, they're my go-to for visual work, and I'm glad they're still in business, even if some of the movies they do are not my taste. Regardless of what production they work on, it's important they still provide the kind of craft they do in bringing something simple like a lawnmower or lobster to life. I could praise the visual aesthetics and some of the more little ingenious touches they added here. From Fred's snakeskin tie to the fact that they use sand dollars for currency. They thought every step and way how to transport an animated setting and scenario into a three-dimensional world. They even went as far as to consult William Hanna and Joseph Barbera for certain little details, like, would something like beer exist in this universe? And those two would be like, no beer, make it lava juice. Lava juice! We got the cast, we got the sets, we got the world building, but there's one tiny, insignificant, yet crucial thing missing. Can you guess what it is? I do hope so. When we come back from Nostalgia Break, we are going to answer that question. Oh, we shall.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. They're a modern Stone Age family. Here's Greg in his hard hat. He really rocks in Mr. Slate's quote. Then watch Fred and Barney's both feet.
Sorry, Bart. Let's eat.
Feed Fred Brontosaurus steaks to eat. When you're with the Flintstones, you'll have a gay old time.
Hard Hat Fred, Bolorama Fred, Big Mouth Fred, and other Flintstones figures and cars sold separately. New from Mattel.
Watch me trick Fred. Stop the movie. I can't play you without your super chocolatey pebbles.
My Cocoa Pebbles in the Flintstones movie? Okay.
A chocolatey blockbuster.
Hey, Barney.
See you in the movies.
Post Cocoa Pebbles cereal, part of this complete breakfast. Now you can get a Flintstones movie poster free.
Oh, Fred.
Free movie poster inside mock boxes of Pebbles.
Right now, when you go back in time at Rock Donald's, you can bring home special Stone Age souvenirs. 4 uniquely chiseled bedrock mugs.
These will look great with my bone china.
They're made of the latest Stone Age material. Glass. Every time you buy any extra value meal or any other purchase, you can get a mug for just 99 cents.
That is a rock bottom price.
So collect all 4, because even before they're gone, they're history. What you want is what you get at Rock Donald's today.
I love it here.
It is one thing to have a decent cast. It's another to have nice visual accompaniment. But your movie is only as strong as your story. And the main thing that really falters here is the script. Believe it or not, this didn't require 2 writers to make this film. No. It didn't require 10. Making this movie needed over 30 writers to craft a feasible script out. And I already know exactly what you're thinking at this point. What the heck happened? Let's jump back a bit earlier to when I mentioned this movie was planned in 1985 and to be a Richard Donner-directed vehicle. Steven D'Souza worked on a version of the script that was submitted in 1987 that got rejected. We'll get back onto that later. A couple more drafts were made in 1990, one of them made by Mitch Markowitz, known for writing TV shows like MASH and Good Morning Vietnam. His version was said to be inspired by The Grapes of Wrath, where Fred and Barney leave town and end up trying to live in some trailer parks. This was also rejected by Donner for feeling it was too sentimental for him. Once Amblin and Spielberg purchased the film rights, as What was finding a new director, they tossed out all the original drafts they tried and had Michael J. Wilson turn in a 4-page treatment. Fun fact, this guy would later create and do some writing work for the Ice Age movies. Just saying. A couple more drafts later, Levant decided the best possible solution. Rent out a room at Amblin Studios, bring in 20 more writers whose experience included work on Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Night Court, spitball a bunch of scene and gag ideas, structure them into a script, and then have input from the show's creator for any changes. How to best describe? It was something like this.
Let's see. A something by any other name.
Carnation, peony, iris,
Yeah.
rose? What about
That's
rose?
Did you say rose?
Yeah, rose.
Ooh, rose is good. Rose by any other name. Yeah, that
Oh, I
works.
like
All
that
right.
a lot.
Okay. All right.
Rose.
Moving on.
Hey, what about tulip?
Rose is fine.
Now, of course, I could have gone with the obvious Simpsons clip, given David Silverman did work on this movie. What? What are you correcting me about? Huh? Really? Not that David Silverman? Huh? No! The David Silverman who worked on sitcoms like Alf, Newhart, and animated shows like Our Real Monsters and Duckman, and being one of the creators of Nickelodeon's underrated TV animated series, The Wild Thornberrys? That David Silverman! Huh. I'm glad you exist in my universe, my dear. I don't know how else I recover from an error like that. Bottom line, it's no wonder this movie is a mess in the storytelling department. I know situation sitcom comedy was the baseline for the Flintstones show, but when adapting something like this to a feature film, it's important to pair this with a story that challenges their characters to go outside of the show's norm. Outside of the vast majority of rock puns? Is there anything salvageable? Get this. The main story involves an executive named Cliff Vandercave and his secretary Sharon Stone, who plan to steal Slate & Co.'s money with the intentions of pinning the thievery on a stooge of their choosing. And before anyone brings it up, yes, that's Twin Peaks Kyle Atreides McLaughlin and Halle Berry. Performance-wise, they're not bad. McLaughlin is having a blast soaking up this villainous role, and I do admire how Halle goes from being this seductive accomplice to actually showing she has a heart of gold.
Why don't we turn ourselves in? Then we can rot in jail until the polls freeze over.
I was just thinking.
Stick to your strengths, Miss Stone.
But that's not my biggest problem. The lengths they will go to with their plan is so convoluted that it's just enough to send someone up a wall. First, they find a patsy through a bogus aptitude test to find a new vice executive president, something of which Fred is not too good at, and because he helped out Barney earlier with the adoption fees on Bam Bam, Barney decides to switch tests out of guilt, and thus it makes it appear as if Fred has a higher score while Barney has the lowest.
That big ape?
No, the big ape got a 65.
Okay. I can let the fact slide that nobody is chiseling their names into the tablets, as quite possibly their names be written on the envelopes. So that's one plot hole nailed down. But there's another one that butters me up just a little. The mode the villains are taking in finding their patsy or bedrock proxy, I know, released the same year, gotta reference it somehow, is by finding the smartest on their aptitude test. Not the dumbest, the smartest. They kind of got the upper hand here thanks to Barney switching tests. But would it make more sense just to hire someone really dumb so they could use to their will? One who's not intelligent, bright, and can so easily catch on to their evil doings of embezzlement? And given the fact that Neanderthals exist in this world, a little detail that I actually do admire, showing that there's different kinds of cave people in the world of Bedrock, that only leads me to guess two things. Exactly how highly evolved are the executives in this universe compared to everyone else? That is only one element I can actually buy. If this whole will of social prehistoric class is measured by how massively evolved their brains are. And if that's the case, it only leaves me to wonder if Cliff is really not that bright, or if maybe he's not looking at things in a more far perspective at what he could be doing, and the convoluted nature of their will to do this whole test, which I can kind of accept to an extent, given how it would be random to see them walk up to some random Cro-Magnon and say, "Here, congratulations, you've been hired. Come, we don't need to explain everything." Just really makes our villains far more dumber than they appear. And second, if prehistoric people of all kinds do exist in Bedrock, does this also mean we got this guy flying around?
Captain Caveman!
Word to the Captain Caveman. But hey, we need a plot, don't we? Fred gets promoted to become...
I'm vice president of...
Industrial procurement.
How about that?
Guess what I am? Vice President of Industrial Procurement!
Okay. That gag was actually funny. Yet, in the process, Barney gets fired for supposedly having the lowest score, and the Flintstones do what they can to help the rebels out, even if it means letting them stay with them. Meanwhile, the success of the new job goes to Fred's head, and turns into a rich snob who prefers fortune over friends. There's parts here where I see this working, and moments where it doesn't. The whole idea of Fred getting too comfortable with his position, I am fine with. It's set up early on how he enjoys a simple life, but it gets challenged due to Wilma's mother citing disappointment in him. It could work given how at times in the series, Fred would want to go far out to achieve fame or greed. And it's a lesson learned time after time again that one doesn't know the true riches in life until they realize what they actually have. I can vouch for that. But seeing him turn away from his friends later on feels kind of jarring. Yeah, I get it, there needs to be a third act breakup, but I've seen that done better in other big screen adaptations, like Wayne's World or The Addams Family. Here, it just feels needed so we can have Fred see what damage he's done and try to fix it. One could argue that most of Fred's push to this new attitude is influenced from Cliff, and believe it or not, there are some deleted scenes in certain TV airings that show it. Like when Cliff convinces Fred to fire Barney as his first test assignment.
If you don't fire him, I will. And then I'll fire you. If you don't fire him, I will. And then I'll fire you. It's a lovely office, Fred. I'd hate to see you lose it over something as piddly as misplaced loyalty.
One could argue this little deleted moment is just a basic throwaway line, but even then, it does sink in a little deeper compared to the theatrical cut where Fred is just outright threatened that he's going to lose his job if he doesn't go through what he has. He's risking this particular choice just for what Fred wanted to become, and in that case alone, even if it's just a small, tiny eye drop of a moment, it still matters. Again, this happens later when Cliff suggests to build a machine to build houses easier to Mr. Slate. Now, in the theatrical cut, Fred's response is kind of brushed over, and the way it's edited doesn't make sense, given the thing does get made later.
I hate to bust your bubble, but if you build houses this small, who's gonna live in them?
What is this?
A center for ants?
However, in the TV cut...
Now, I know from up here that the quarry looks small, but I spent a lot of time down there, and let me tell you something, those are big rocks. There's no way this little doodad is gonna do the job.
You are a comedian.
Mr. Slate, I do believe we found our new MC for our annual talent show.
I know it's just a small nitpick in the grand scheme of things, but sometimes little moments like that can add up in the full scale of it all. Just little small eye droplets can really, really help a lot of plot holes, no matter how big or small they are. Even more head-scratching in the theatrical cut is this. After Fred fires Barney, his best friend just easily accepts it, knowing the fact that his own best friend canned him. Yet, in some TV airings...
Fred, I'd rather have my life ruined by my best friend than a total stranger.
No, Barn. Every man has a choice. Tomorrow morning, I'm marching into that office, and I'm telling Van de Cave to get somebody else to do his dirty work for him because I quit.
Fred, if you feel that strongly about
Barn, don't try to talk me out of this. You know, I only took that job because I had so much to love.
just both of us being out of work, Fred, it just don't make sense.
You're a very persuasive man, Barney. Guess I'll just have to do my time in that marble prison.
Hey, don't worry about me, Fred. I've been working in that quarry since it was only 8 feet deep.
That's the boy.
Yeah. There could be a whole new world opening up for me, Fred. Maybe I'll take in that franchise show this weekend.
That's the spirit. You know, Barn, in a way I envy you.
Really? In what way, Fred?
I'm not sure, but in some way.
Yeah, thanks.
I understand from an economic point of view that the shorter your movie is, the more show times you're going to get out of it. But just a little 2 or 3 minutes of character development is not going to hurt your audience. Sure, I could rag on, but I can't complain too much. The original concept for the 1987 draft was far wilder in comparison. The original story had similar things, yet it was done different. Barney was a stay-at-home inventor that creates a new form of fiberglass called fiber rock. Through a series of events, Slate mistakes Fred as the creator and wants to use the material for building furniture and a planned city complete with a space needle. Only dubbed Slate Needle. But don't worry, Fred is able to give Barney co-credit, or else how will he be able to make the stuff? Meanwhile, there's storylines about Betty and Wilma trying to get the kids into a fancy school and perform in a talent show. There's also a robber dinosaur, a shortage of kibble for the pet dinos, Fred trying to be the president of the water buffalo, but nothing compares to the absolute craziness of the ending, where it channels towering inferno levels of disaster, where the new fiber rock material is missing a key ingredient and it causes the new city they build to crumble. Somehow Fred is stuck in this Godzilla-designed mascot costume, which turns out to be flame repellent, and he has to save everybody. Describing this sounds like a pure fever dream, and trust me, you can find copies of this script floating around online. It's so ridiculous and maddening that it actually does make me feel a little more comfortable over the final product we got, regardless of its faults. I know a lot of writers had a hard time trying to create a solid plot to pair all of this with, but if this is the best they can come up with, I'll take it, knowing the mounds of scripts on what we could have ended up with. But the final product still has problems. I can let the jokes get a pass, but at the end of the day, it really needed a better story to be paired with. And yeah, stuff like company embezzling and child adoption is fine, given the first couple of seasons of the Flintstones was geared more towards adults. But for all the life being plugged into the people in front of and behind the camera, it's ironic to see so many hands trying to work with such a lifeless script. On the whole, I really don't hate this movie, but I do consider it mostly harmless. Granted, there's only one poo joke, so at least this flick does have standards. But for me personally, I gotta chalk this one up as a personal guilty pleasure. Maybe it's because what we got afterwards was pretty bad, and when you compare the 1994 Flintstones movie to so many other big screen TV adaptations we got further down the road, this actually feels watchable in comparison to all that. Now, this adaptation of the Flintstones has its pros and cons. When the casting works, it works. When a performance really tries, you can tell they're trying to make this work. I can give positive marks to the visual aesthetic and special effects, given there's a lot of creativity placed in here. But where the movie falls apart is the story. If anything, I find myself coming back to this one just for the performances and jokes alone.
Save you?
You mean you haven't forgiven me yet?
Nope. And frankly, I don't think this is gonna help. I saw a crowd, I figured I'd sell a few snow cones.
I took a cherry.
I can't break a 20.
There are some saving graces in here at best, but fans of the show deserved way better, given the magnitude of effort being placed in here. But that didn't stop this movie from coming in and being a big hit at the box office. Weighing in at $46 million of a budget, no matter what the critics said, thrashed, or trashed, it still made a healthy profit. Its Memorial Day opening weekend gross was so massive that it outdid that of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, who previously held that record. When all was said and done, it had a domestic gross of $130 million, with international gross bringing it up to $341 million worldwide. Why was this such a hit at the time? Well, I can think of two things. One, the hype machine was strong with this one. At the time, there was so much merch placed out there, from toys, books, t-shirts, frisbees, and even a unique McDonald's promo that brought back the McRib, and some novelty glasses. And second is nostalgia. With everyone's willpower, remembering, and knowing the show that well, of course they're going to stampede out in the theaters just to see how it's going to relate to the delightful animated series they grew up with. Now, granted, recommending this one to newcomers is tough. It depends if you're aware of the series. If you've seen it and liked it, there's a couple things you'll take away from here. It's not a perfect adaptation by any means, but even then, it does have some entertainment value. But for those who are unfamiliar with the show, yeah, your mileage is gonna vary. But I will say to those who aren't fans and are fans, if you're looking for something different, thankfully, there are some alternatives I do know that I can recommend easily. 2001 gave us The Flintstones on the Rocks, a TV movie that aired on Cartoon Network a couple of times, but never to home video. The film returned to its roots of the more adult first two seasons, hence why there's no Pebbles or Bam Bam, as we see Fred and Wilma trying to see if their marriage is worth saving.
Yes, Mrs. Flintstone, what could possibly be the sauce?
When was the last time you kissed me, Fred?
For the most part, it's well animated with some unique set pieces, and the voice casting is a perfect imitation of the original, especially with Kevin Michael Richards' Barney being spot on.
Hey Fred, can I borrow another quarter? If you, know what I mean?
The only issues is added in our clumsy diamond heist plot, and some cultural stereotypes that might not fly today.
My friend, I'd like to show you something. Say hello to Mr. $5 bill. Okay?
Still, it's worth hunting down if you can find a copy. But perhaps one that is worth your time is the 2016 DC Comics series shepherded by Mark Russell. At a length of 12 issues, this explores Bedrock in ways unthinkable. It's the darkest interpretation for certain. Dare I'd say the way it explores the household appliances here makes Brave Little Toaster look tame in comparison. You will cry a river of tears over a vacuum cleaner. No spoil, but trust me. But it does provide a lot of themes on social class, religion, gender roles that are explored way deeper here. And in my opinion, it has the best take on the Great Gazoo you will ever see. I wish I could talk about what else makes this worth a read, but I won't spoil too much. Less said, the better. Perhaps at the end of the day, the more unique interpretation of familiar property is one's own nostalgia. It's all about remembering when they first saw it, albeit on TV or in theaters, and seeing if it still holds up. No matter how good or bad the experience is, it does make for something interesting. And to everybody else, it's just a pop culture curiosity. Though, I'll be quite frank. It certainly beats the granite out of that crummy prequel that we do not speak of. And for the record, we could have had a franchise. A trilogy, if you will. The original idea was to film 2 sequels back to back, but there was one thing standing in their way.
You see what happens? You see what happens? You see what happens?
This is what happens when you make me do another Flintstones movie, Steven! Okay, that's probably not what happened. But truth be told, John Goodman did beg and plead to Spielberg not to do another one of them, citing that once was just enough. And that's fine, given the will we've seen John Goodman do in terms of comedy and drama, so well played, Goodman. Well played. Speaking of TV shows, as much as I appreciate the idea of doing movies, I think it's time I took a little break and actually did something a little different. And for that matter, it's time we consulted the Cabinet of Curiosities. Okay, I'm just going to randomly stick my hand in here. Whenever I pull out is going to be the next topic I'm going to cover for the next episode. But hey, it could make for something interesting. Alright, let's see here. Here. I can work with this. Cut.
How could you ever marry that man?
Mother, that man is not my husband.
That's right. He plays Dr. Gravelman on The Young and the Thumbless. Mr. Flintstone, what are you doing?
I'm an executive. I'm embezzling.
I'm shocked.